At the beginning of the story, we see a young boy named Nick whose father is telling him that in the future, he will meet a girl who will give him a flower, and that he must help her. Nick's father possesses some charismatic powers. He can control things from a distance. He is on the run from a special military unit that has been hunting people with such powers since World War II, forcing them into service. Nick's father explains that helping that girl will lead to helping many others who are in dire need. Soon after, some agents from this special group, known as Division, arrive at their hotel. Nick's father warns him not to do anything that might get them caught, because these people can see the future. Just before the team raids their room, Nick's father uses his powers to hide him in another room. Henry Carver, the leader of the agents, orders the raid. Nick watches from hiding as gunfire erupts in the room and sees his father hurl 2 agents violently against the wall. Afterward, Carver orders the others to take Nick's father's body to the lab. Helplessly, Nick cries in silence as Carver leaves. The story then jumps ahead 10 years. Under Carver's supervision, a girl is being injected with a serum intended to enhance her powers. But the injection could also kill her. The girl's name is Kira. At the same time, a woman is brought into the room and drops a marble on the floor. Moments after the injection, Kira begins convulsing and her heart monitor flatlines, indicating she's dead. But when a doctor approaches, Kira suddenly attacks him, steals his security pass and a syringe, and escapes. One of the doctors hits the security button, causing the exit doors to seal automatically. As Kira runs, the marble that the woman dropped rolls and wedges itself in the doorframe just before the lock engages, holding the door open. Kira escapes. Carver tells Victor to deploy all the sniffers, people who can detect anyone who touched an object simply by scent. Meanwhile, in Hong Kong, Nick is trying to use his powers to control dice. He goes to a park to cheat in a gambling game, but fails on the last move and loses. Now in debt by $6,000, he's beaten by the gamblers and barely escapes. When Nick returns home, 2 agents from the organization show up. They're looking for a girl who stole something important from them. Since the agents can see both past and future, one of them realizes Nick has been alone here for a long time. They warn him not to run because they'll find him again and then leave. As soon as they go, Nick starts packing clothes and a gun. Just then, he gets a mysterious phone call from a girl telling him to open the door and put the gun down. When he opens the door, he finds Cassie, a 13-year-old watcher, who immediately lunges for the chicken in his fridge, which she saw in one of her visions. Cassie introduces herself and says she wants to help Nick find a missing suitcase containing $1 million. She reveals she's a second-generation watcher and can see glimpses of the future, although they're not always entirely accurate. Cassie tells him the girl Division is after has the suitcase. Nick, however, refuses to mess with Division, even if the money is real. Cassie is confident that Nick will help her eventually, and says something terrible will happen if they don't find that girl. Just then, Cassie gets a vision that some people are chasing the girl through a market. When they arrive, they're confronted by a gang called the Pop Family, led by Pop Father. He tells Nick his daughter, a watcher, saw him with the runaway girl. Pop Daughter points a gun at Cassie and warns her that she knows how she'll die. But Cassie is confident she's not going to die just yet. She throws Nick his gun, and Nick uses his powers to hurl Pop Father and his assistant against a wall. He escapes with Cassie. Pop Father's gang includes people called bleeders, individuals whose screams are so sharp they shatter glass. Pop Daughter sees in her vision that Nick and Cassie are running toward large fish tanks and sends the bleeders after them. When the bleeders arrive and start screaming, the tanks burst, causing Nick and Cassie to slip and fall. Nick tells Cassie to run, but one bleeder corners them and screams, causing intense pain in their ears. Pop Daughter then gets a new vision showing Kira with Nick and Cassie. But in the next vision, she sees Kira disappearing alone. She warns her father that if Nick dies now, Kira will escape their grasp. Meanwhile, Kira wakes up on a boat, where a man is smoking a pipe. On a mirror in the boat, 4100 Nick is written in lipstick. Kira rewrites Nick underneath it, both in exactly the same handwriting. Cassie, using her visions, tracks Nick down to a healer named Teresa, called a Stitch, because she can instantly heal injuries. Teresa heals Nick as repayment for help Cassie's mother once gave her. Cassie gives Nick a lotus flower and reveals that Division locked her mother away because they couldn't control her. Then she shows Nick a painting of her vision, Division agents taking a woman, the same agents who visited Nick's house. As they prepare to leave, Cassie shows Nick another painting, warning that he and she might die because of a woman. Meanwhile, Agent Holden and Agent Mac catch Kira on the street. On the way to the airport, they take her to a cafe to use the washroom. There, Kira uses her powers to implant a false memory in Mac, making him believe Holden killed his brother. Mac, enraged, kills Holden outside the cafe. When Mac comes to his senses, he realizes what he's done and rushes back to find Kira. But she blinds him with soap and tries to escape. Though Mac grabs her, a struggle breaks out. Her bracelet breaks and falls apart. She hits Mac with a bathroom sign and finally knocks him unconscious with a kick to the head. Back in a taxi, Nick focuses on his powers while looking through Cassie's sketch pad. She had drawn a cocktail glass with an olive outside it. Nick realizes it's not an olive, it's a bead from a bracelet. They must find something like that. Mac gives the bracelet beads to Carver, saying he suddenly remembered his brother. Carver replies that he never had a brother and fires him. Mac promises not to be fooled by false memories again, but Carver says he doesn't give second chances, then kills him. Carver and Victor leave, and Carver instructs that these beads be given to every sniffer and watcher in the city to locate Kira. Nick and Cassie go to a club and find a shifter named Hook, someone who can change the form of objects. They ask him to transform something into a bead to help them find the suitcase. He turns an earring into a bead and tells them to take it to a sniffer named Emily. At Emily's home, they learn that Division has already given her a similar bead. After smelling both, Emily says they'll find the girl at Canton Pier. Meanwhile, Kira uses her powers to convince a couple to give her a ride. Just as she's about to leave, she sees Nick and Cassie and opens fire on them. Nick recognizes her and asks if she's the girl Division is after. The two clearly know each other. Kira is furious that when Division took her, Nick didn't even try to find her. But Nick insists he called many times and assumed she didn't want to talk when she didn't answer. As they walk through the streets, Kira says Division wants her suitcase, but she doesn't even know what's inside or remember what happened recently. Nick figures she erased her own memory on purpose so Division couldn't extract it. However, her memories of Nick are still intact. Cassie returns and urges Nick to ditch the girl because she doesn't even have the suitcase. But Nick promises he'll find it. Cassie is afraid that when Division comes for Kira, they'll take all of them. Nick says they need to use a shadow, a person who can block sniffers from sensing someone, to keep Kira hidden. That same night, they met a shadow named Pinky Stein, who demanded $10,000 per day for his service and guaranteed that as long as Kira stayed within 20 feet of him, no one would be able to find her. Until Kira could remember the location of the suitcase, the three of them stayed in a motel. As Cassie went out to get some food, Pinky figured Rick might want some alone time with Kira, so he left too. Rick was pacing around the room when Kira made him believe the bathroom was on fire. Scared, he rushed inside, only to find Kira already there. The two of them spent some intimate time together. Outside the hotel, Pop Girl confronted Cassie again and told her she knew how she was going to die. She showed Cassie her sketchbook, which had a tiger drawn in it, and threatened her, saying, "Leave the city, and you'll survive." When Cassie returned to the room, she warned Nick that they were all going to die because of Kira. Pinky also confirmed that despite their precautions, the Watchers were still tracking them. If this continued, they would all be caught. To distract the Watchers, Rick suggested they all split up. He asked Kira to go with Pinky, promising he'd find them again soon. Since Cassie was in deep sleep, they decided not to wake her. However, she suddenly woke up from a vision. A short while later, Pop Girl arrived at the room, only to find no one there. After sending Kira off with Pinky, Nick asked Emily to use the bead they'd gotten from Division to locate Carver. Soon enough, he found Carver in a restaurant. Using his powers, Nick floated guns toward Carver and Victor before stepping out. Carver, visibly annoyed, told him that many Watchers in Division had already predicted Nick and his team were going to die soon. He also warned that Kira would die if she didn't get the next injection, an injection only Division possessed. As Nick's control over the floating guns began to weaken, Victor used his own powers to gain control over them. Nick pushed Victor into a wall and grabbed a gun, attempting to flee. Victor shot at him, but Nick slid across the floor, firing back. Victor stopped each bullet mid-air using his abilities. Then, Nick made the gun float and fire rounds at Victor on its own. During the chaos, another gun floated toward Nick, but, fortunately, it was out of bullets. Victor then took control of that gun and used it to knock Nick out by hitting his head. He blocked Nick's path with a chair and slammed him into walls and the ceiling. Meanwhile, outside the restaurant, Carver encountered Cassie, who was sketching. She pleaded with him not to hurt her, but Carver didn't intend to, as any interference might alter the future, something he didn't want. Cassie then warned him that even killing Nick would change the future. After hearing that, Carver went back inside and stopped Victor from killing Nick. When Nick and Cassie returned to the motel, they found that Kira's health was worsening. Nick lay beside her and asked what was inside the suitcase. Kira revealed that it contained a psychic steroid that could enhance powers. Division wanted her back because she was the only one who had survived after taking the injection. Cassie showed them a new vision sketch where she was holding Kira's shoe. They checked Kira's shoes and found a locker key hidden in them. As Kira's condition worsened, they rushed to Emily to find out what the key unlocked. Cassie warned that Pop Girl would find out everything because she always saw things before them. Emily discovered that the locker's number had been hidden with tape. Cassie began sketching again and realized that the entire building was being hidden from Watchers. Meanwhile, Pop Girl met with Teresa. Nick devised a new plan. No one would think about what to do next. They'd just act. Everyone would be given a letter detailing their task, to be opened only at the exact time of execution. Nick even wrote a letter to himself. He then asked Pinky for the address of someone who could erase his memory. This man, named Chung, was located. Nick asked Chung to erase the last 2 hours of his memory, specifically so he'd forget about the letters. That way, Division couldn't read his mind. Nick left a letter and some cash on the table for Chung to open once the job was done. At 7:35, everyone opened their letters. As Chung began wiping Nick's memory, Pop Girl lost track of Nick's future. Hook, who had disguised himself as a safety inspector, went to the hidden building. His letter instructed him to open locker 4100. When he opened it, an old woman fired at him, but Hook convinced her that Kira had sent him, and he no longer needed the building to remain shadowed. He took the suitcase and returned to the motel, where he switched it with a fake one. Cassie took the fake suitcase to Nick's house and retrieved a gun from the drawer. After Nick regained consciousness from the memory wipe, he opened his letter, which instructed him to go home. When he arrived, the suitcase was there, but Teresa ambushed him. She took the suitcase and handed it to the pop bleeders. One bleeder tried to scream at Nick, but Teresa stopped him, saying she'd promised the bleeder's sister that she'd kill Nick slowly. Spotting the gun Cassie had left behind, Nick used his power to aim it at Teresa and demanded she heal him immediately. Elsewhere, when Pop Father opened the suitcase and found the syringe, he was thrilled, until it turned into a soy sauce bottle. Pop Girl told her bleeder brother that the real syringe was still in the building. Meanwhile, Carver tried to save Kira by injecting her with an immune suppressant. He revealed that Kira was actually a division agent who had volunteered to take the injection. He showed her her ID and explained that it was her training that had allowed her to survive the shot. He used his powers to try and restore her memory. Cassie, worried about her predicted death, was told by Nick to just keep walking without thinking about where she was going to confuse the watchers. She eventually arrived at a Chinese restaurant, where she found containers with tiger logos, matching her drawing of a tiger attacking her. Pop Girl soon arrived and held a gun to Cassie's head. Pop Girl had been disgraced in front of her family after the soy sauce incident. Just then, Chung appeared and erased Pop Girl's memory. Nick then called Carver and offered to trade the syringe for Kira. When they met at the designated location, Kira appeared healthier and asked Nick for the suitcase. She reminded him of the first time he confessed his love to her, but then admitted that it was a memory she had planted in his mind. They had only met for the first time the day before. Everything Nick remembered about their love had been fabricated by her powers. Just then, Hook called and told Nick to take the drug and hand the phone to Carver. He told Carver that if he wanted the suitcase, he had to let Nick and Kira go. Carver and Victor were summoned to a new location. When they arrived, Victor knocked Nick out and locked him in the car trunk. Meanwhile, Pop family and their goons also showed up to retrieve the suitcase from the locker. To protect Carver, Victor blocked all the bullets and threw colored powder into the air. When he flung two goons away, one landed on Carver's car, popping the trunk. Nick crawled out with two guns and headed for the locker. Some tried to capture Kira, but she used her powers to manipulate their minds into thinking they were her guards. When Nick called out to Kira, they turned their guns on him. Victor flung Nick into the air, and the two fought. A bleeder arrived and screamed, but Victor killed him with a sharp bamboo stick. Pop Father, enraged at his son's death, screamed so powerfully that Victor died from the impact. Blood flowed from Nick's ears. He knew one more scream would finish him. So, he used his power to collapse the building's structure onto Pop Father. Carver saw Kira using her powers to manipulate the goons and told her to throw them off the roof. Just then, Nick arrived and warned Kira that Carver was manipulating her mind. He attacked Carver, who used his powers to try to control Nick's mind and push him off the building. But Nick regained control, snatched the syringe from Carver, and injected himself with it. Carver warned that he would die, but Nick went through with it and passed out in pain. Later, Carver and Kira left, and Cassie arrived. She retrieved the real suitcase from a dumpster and told Nick that Division would never let the syringe fall into the wrong hands. She was still unsure whether she should trade the syringe for her mother's release. Nick asked Cassie what he had just injected. She replied, soy sauce. On a plane back to Division HQ, Kira opened the envelope Nick had given her. Inside were photos of them at Coney Island, with the words, "Kill him but A.S. Carver slept." Kira used her powers to take control of his mind and killed him. She realized she truly loved Nick and had never planted those memories. The photo was proof that their time together was real. And now, with Carver dead, they were finally free.